Connecting with purpose is about doing what matters most in a time when our families, workplaces, and communities need us. This show from Purpose Views presents honest conversations about what's possible when we invest in helping our people be their best, purposeful selves. You'll hear the challenges of making those investments and tips for reaping their rewards. This show is designed to help people-first leaders like you create the impact you seek. Let me introduce you to the purpose-driven and real-talking hosts, Mark, Neil, and Nell.
Welcome everyone to what I think is probably episode 14 of Connecting with Purpose, and I'm really excited to have Chris Allaire here, who I've had the opportunity to have a couple of conversations with already. When I give Chris's quick intro here, you'll see why we've had some engaging conversations. Chris is the founder and CEO of Averity, which is a New York City-based recruiting company, very much people forward, kind of people-focused recruiting company that's actually been named as the best staffing and recruiting company place to work multiple times for the North American geography. And Chris's approach, I guess, to recruiting and probably work and life generally is really treating people as treat people. Human beings are not buzzwords. These are Chris's words. They're not algorithmic searches. None of us are robots, right? People hire people at the end of the day. And he's used that to differentiate his approach in the technology space to become a lead recruiting firm. And I'm sharing a lot here, Chris, but I just loved this when I read it. But Chris has got two simple philosophies, which I think are important for all of us. If it's not fun, it's not worth doing. And find something you're good at and then do it better than anyone else. Two pretty key messages I'm sure get shared a lot. And from a personal perspective, he's a husband and father. He's got two girls. He's obviously a bit of an entrepreneur. Self-proclaimed damn good cook. I'm looking forward to finding this out. Crab cake connoisseur. Very jealous. I'm hungry. Haven't had lunch yet. A decent golfer. I'm subpar in golf, but I appreciate it. Guitarist, dog lover, pilot, and baseball enthusiastic. So, if nothing else, off the back of this podcast, I'm looking forward to visiting Chris for a weekend to take all of that stuff in. So, Chris, thanks so much for being here. It's great to reconnect again.
Thanks for having me. This is awesome. Love talking to you.
Well, let's dive in. We've reintroduced back into our podcast Magic Moments, rather than kind of asking people, hey, how did you get here, and talk us through your career and all that sort of stuff. Rather just like kind of unpacking life or career via three magic moments. And most of the audience will know what these are, but they're kind of in retrospect with the benefit of time, and you look back on them, 10 out of 10 moments. Moments that maybe weren't actually magic at the time. They could have been best self, best contribution moments. But they equally at the time maybe could have been really traumatic, or even dealing with some form of tragedy or a big challenge that you had to overcome. But with the benefit of time, when you look back on it, they were pivotal moments or developmental moments that really influenced what came next and the impact that you ended up kind of going on to have. So what are your three that kind of spring to mind, your magic moments?
So I found it very difficult to narrow it down to three, because I think if you really start going through your life and your career, hopefully you have a lot more than three. So to start, it's funny because if someone asked me that question, it's like I have one thing that always pops into my mind first, and it's actually how I started the company. Was a career working with organizations that I was always very good at what I did, but the organizations that I've worked for unfortunately didn't have the best reputations. And I found myself constantly looking to pioneer some type of change. And I found myself actually at one point in time, I was talking over my wife, and I found myself doing a lot more complaining about the company and the structures and the places I was working, less about the industry. And I've had a lot of people like over the years tell me, hey, why don't you go into business for yourself? So it kind of hit me. And all of a sudden I had some conversations, and I remember sitting down with my wife going, you know what? I think I'm going to start my own company. I think I'm going to go into business for myself. And I think the magic moment for me is when we had a 6-month-old daughter who is now 10. And rather than my wife looking at me saying, well, what about safety and security and taking care of the family? My wife looks at me and says, I think it's about time. So the magic moment for me there was the I mean, she's amazing, but that support and the push to kind of, she didn't like to reel me back from the ledge, like, well, let's talk about it. She threw me right off of it. And it really was that springboard as far as like, wow, all right, like, you know, the older we get, the more risk adverse we become. So I guess if I'm talking about this right now, this is what we're doing. So that was that was the number one magic moment for me. I mean, I have 2 daughters, so I'd be lying to say, you know, the birth of my 2 kids wasn't, you know, magic moments. I think it's interesting because I have 2 companies. The first I have and they're both named after my daughters. So the big company that everyone's familiar with is Averity. My oldest daughter's name is Avery. So that's spawned the name of my company. And it's amazing how when you have I don't say sense of drive, but when you realize that you're really working for something much bigger than yourself, it you know, so I'm gonna you know, use the magic moments to springboard into like purpose and stuff like that. I think that's when you look around and you realize that you've got, you know, 2 kids that look up to you, you know, that you're their hero. It's a pretty amazing thing to think about, especially, you know, I've got 2 daughters, so, you know, I want to be that role model, that rock for them. And I'll be honest with you, one of the magic moments I had is that the first time I landed an airplane alone, and it is a magic moment. I'll tell you that, because it is a true test of what you've been taught and what you're capable of. So I've, as you mentioned before, I'm a pilot. I'm just a casual, fun. I like to go up, do some turns, go from point A to point B, just a casual pilot, nothing big. I'm not a commercial airline. I have no intentions on doing anything like that. But when you land an airplane, it's so funny because I've had a lot of people like, wow, like you fly planes. I'm like, flying planes, believe it or not, is not that hard to do. Landing them is a completely different story. So the very first time I landed an airplane on my own was pretty amazing, and it was one of those smiles that you just can't get rid of. So it was pretty cool.
Awesome. Yeah, certainly better than the alternative.
I know it's not like you can pull over when you're in the air. So it's like, you know, the sign of a good pilot is the fact that they're still walking.
Yeah.
So
awesome. Love that. No, I love. Thanks for sharing. I love how you've woven your oldest daughter's name into the company name, and just kind of tying those things together, right? And as you said, when you're thinking about purpose, it is always about something bigger than yourself. And so when you think back on those magic moments, but you know, anything generally, like what does that tell you about your purpose? Like, what would you consider your kind of individual purpose to be, and how's that been informed or shaped over the years?
So I really think that my calling and my purpose is to influence people to find that fire inside of them, or something that they're great at, and almost give them the kind of, what I would say is, quote unquote, permission they need to use it. So I think there's a lot of people out there that don't play to their full potential for whatever reason it is. And but what I want to be able to do is influence people to find that thing that's inside of them that makes them explode, and to give them an opportunity to really use it.
I love that. And I love how you actually demonstrated that perfectly with your first magic moment for yourself and your wife, kind of providing that giving you permission role. But it was more than giving you permission. It was like, yeah, absolutely, you should do that. It's about time. That's what you're meant to be doing. And it was permission and a push, right? But it's like, at the end of the day, that's what enabled you to bring out your best self and then ultimately live your purpose, versus trying to live it in an environment or context around which actually you were getting a bit frustrated and distracted because of those other pieces going on. So when you think about that, when you think about influencing people and helping them find that kind of that natural fire inside of themselves, and then sort of, yeah, go, I set you free, off you go, you got permission, it's up to you, go and do it. When on the flip side of that, when you sort of talking to clients or just people generally in business, and you hear them talking about purpose, and you just kind of want to call it out, be like, that's not purpose, or you're just ticking a box here. Like, what's purpose not for you?
Material BS. Money, fame, tangible objects, cars, suits, Rolexes. You know, I've got no problem with any of those types of things, but to be honest with you, like, money is one of the interesting one for me, because I've worked with a lot of people who are always, no, you have an ambition or a goal to make a certain amount of money. I always ask you, Mike, okay, so once you make that certain amount of money, are you going to stop because you've hit your goal? And the answer is like, well, no. I'm like, well, what are you? And I'm going to try to make more. It's like, okay, so when you're talking about like something like a tangible, something like that, especially like when it comes to money, fame, it's never going to be enough. You know, it's so I'm one of those people who's like, I really think fulfillment comes from the way you feel, the way you act, and the way you live your life, the way you walk, not from your title, your you know, whatever's parked in the driveway these days, or you know, the floor that you live on, or the size of your house, or some whole parts of your bank account. Because I tell you one thing, you know, there's advice my wife says a lot. She's like, all those things sound great, but you can't take them with them when you go. No, yeah. They're invaluable. They literally have no value. So
yeah, 100%. I think what's really interesting with that is that obviously there's different circumstances, right? So if you're thinking about the real basic kind of safety and security stuff, money's important in those situations for survival, for food, for shelter, for those sorts of things. Once you've gotten that, and you've gotten to a place where it's not about day-to-day survival, having this kind of significance in your work and life comes from the things you said. It comes for you. It comes from influencing people, helping them find that fire, and giving them permission to go on and kind of live their best life. And when you find that you've been focused on that, which informs that purpose, informs how you feel, how you act, how you behave, what you say, decisions you make, etc. What would you say have been some maybe kind of successes in your career that you would say are partly as a result of you just having literally been driven by that purpose, and the byproducts of it, winning the client, the money, that stuff, those things happened, but ultimately it was that focus on the purpose. And what success is that kind of? What would be some examples of success you feel that's driven for you in your business?
Well, I mean, just being able to attract the type of people that work with me and form my company. I think that's critical, because they're amazing. And we, you know, whether it's been great times or tough times, you know, they love what they do, and they see it, and they stick with me, and they really work, you know, we work together. So, you know, when they feel that, they want to be in business with you. Also, I honestly, like, the clientele that I've been able to drive in my career, especially owning your own firm, really a lot of it is a testament to the fact that they're like, wow, you're going to outwork the competition. You really care about the service. You really care about the way you treat people. Like, you don't just talk it, you believe it. And I'm one of those people who's like, I would rather, win the long-term game than the short-term outcomes. And that's the way I think, that's the way I operate, that's the way I manage things. I'm like, you know what, it takes a long time to grow something correctly, and you're going to have some hiccups along the way, but once it's been built, you turn around, you're like, wow, look what I've done and look what I have. And the foundation is rock solid. And that's always a testament to just, you've got to follow your passion. You've got to stick with it. And it's tough to do sometimes, but it's very easy to be persuaded by the almighty dollar or the almighty fame or the almighty, if I did this, I'd win the contract, which, like, yeah, but, it's up to you if that's what you want to do. With me personally, I'm like, I don't need the contract that bad. I'd rather do things the right way and feel good with who I'm doing business with, and understand that, we both, we have the right things in mind for each other.
Yeah, I'd love to dig into both of those a little bit actually, because they're really powerful headlines, right? That look, when I've been true to my best self, to my purpose, it's attracted the talent that I need to build my team that's stuck with me through thick and thin, and it's got me to that place. And the other one being, it's enabled us to establish partnerships with clients for the long term. So if we're going to kind of dig into each of those a little bit, what I'd like to think through, have you share, is on that first one to start with, around kind of attracting those folks. Like, what would you say? What would you say were some actual kind of practical examples, maybe, of how it has attracted those folks, but you just being authentic about your purpose and why you're here and what you care about with your business? What's either done in terms of attracting folks, or letting some people move on that for whatever reason weren't quite aligned to that? And what impact has that ended up having on the business? Like, what were some sort of things you did, if you like, or practical examples you could share that would bring that to life?
I practice what I preach. And I think it's a lot, there's a lot of things that I think, I'm not going to talk about a lot of other people out there, but there's a lot of people out there that don't practice what they preach. They read it in a book, and do they really follow through on it? I'm one of those types of people. If I say to do something, I do it. And a lot of times I'll turn around and say, this is what I think we should do. Watch me, I'll go first. And I think what happens is you build a lot of respect from the people around you, because it also shows them that I'm human, I'm willing to fail, and if I get cut, I bleed also. So I think when you do that, you build a level of respect of the people around you, that you're like, wow, if he's like, he says to get up early, because you're off to a better start for the day. He says to make sure to work out regularly, right? To go for walks, get some sunshine, etc. And then people will get emails from me at 6 o'clock in the morning, 6:30 in the morning, because I'm at it at 5:45 in the morning, 5:30 in the morning. I work out, I'm not going to say religiously every day, but minimally 4 days a week. And same time, pretty much all the time. It cuts my day up. So I tell people to do it, and then I do it myself. So that's my other thing, is this, it's like kind of that lead by example. But if I'm not willing to do it myself, I don't advise it to other people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the power, right, of modeling certain behaviors that exhibit your best self, and then empowering and supporting your folks, / encouraging them to do what those best self things are for themselves, and giving people the kind of the freedom to be able to do what they need to do so they can show up and perform at their best, which I think is, some great tangible takeaways for everybody, because everyone can apply that in their own way. So then if you're thinking about the second one, then kind of playing the long-term game with clients, like thinking about it as a longer-term partnership versus a short-term transaction. What are some examples, I suppose, of how you've been able to do that? Not necessarily naming clients or whatever, but just thinking through a couple of practical examples of what that looks like.
Casual conversations, not always trying to sell things, really listening. I think when you, I guess listening, if I was going to summarize it, and I mean like really listening, but listening with intent. When someone, and I'm in the recruiting business, right? So I hear a lot of rambles on the reason I'm looking for a new job, what I'm really looking for, why I'm looking for it, what industries you want to be in, etc. So we first started, always gathering lots of information from people. But I think it's when you win people over, it's when you start really talking about, why is that really important to you? Like, oh, that's really cool. What made you want to get into that? All right. So, and then same thing with the reason for leaving. It's very easy to be like, oh, I'm trying to remember like an example, but I've had people tell me like, oh, I want to leave because I want to make more money. And I'm like, well, okay, I guess that happens, but you're not always guaranteed to get more money. But do you have another reason that you really want to look around, that you're looking to leave right now? It's like, well, no, I really just want to get a raise. I'm like, okay, I will help you. But the first suggestion I'm going to make is go to your boss and ask for a raise. Like, rather than leveraging a new job, quitting a job that you sound like you're pretty happy in, like, just go ask to say, listen, I think I deserve a raise. This is what I've done. This is how I've done it. And then ask and see what happens. And if the person says absolutely not, then looking for a job is probably the right thing to do. But if they turn around and say, well, I never knew you felt that way, here's a X percentage increase in salary plus bonus, et cetera, something like that, you're now you're a happier employee, and you don't have to go look for a job. Now, in that, I've talked myself out of a candidate on the market.
Yeah.
Right. But that conversation that I've been able to have with that person about really like understanding what's going on for them and to provide, some, whether they take the advice or not, I don't know. But I have had numerous people turn around and say, Chris, you won't believe it. I asked for a raise and I got one. I can't thank you enough. Yeah. Like, you're absolutely welcome.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm always that one, like, listen, well, good. Well, when you're ready to look, think of me, or when something happens, give me a shout, or hey, if nobody else is looking, let me know. But that idea of just being a little bit more thoughtful. I've had candidates where I've had competing offers, and I have phenomenal relationships with a lot of these guys where I've had competing offers, and they're talking to me about the other job, and then they tell me the offer they're getting, and I'm like, I'll be honest with you, that sounds like the job you want. You should take that job. And then typically the answer is like, well, wait a minute, you just talked yourself out of a commission check. So, well, yeah, I'm not worried about that commission check because I know I'll get another one someplace else. But I also know that if I try to hard close or sell you on this job, you're going to have buyer's remorse. You're probably not going to start the job, and you're going to think of me as some pushy kind of a-hole salesman. And that's not the way I do things. I think you should take that job. And I've had people and they've turned around like, I've never, like, wow, that's who, and it's kind of like, who does that? Well, I do. And then when that next time that person's on the market, what do? They call me, and they say, Chris, you were the only recruiter that I will work with. Like, you're the only person I really trust enough to give me the transparent honesty of really what's happening.
Yeah. And I assume that. Sorry, so I was just going to say, so I assume that the flip side of that works exactly the same way with clients as well. So for the candidates, right, kind of taking that longer term view, maybe not pushing your particular opportunity when they've got competing offers, because ultimately it shows care for them, and that builds trust and integrity, right? And so it's kind of the trust is the bridge to that kind of long-term game. I'm assuming it's the same for clients. Is there anything different for the clients that are coming to you saying, hey, we've got roles to fill?
Other than you truly caring about their business and really understanding what their business is all about, because that's what they're doing. So whatever their business is that if they're like, when they're pretty passionate about it, my goal is it's kind of the same way. It's just to really understand what they're doing, who they're building, who's using it, and why it's important. And when you really start understanding that, then you have the ability to market it with some passion, as opposed to just reading, the job description on a piece of paper. It's like, oh, this company builds X, versus like, this company's awesome. Take a look at what they're building. This is some examples of who's using it out right now. There's the competition out in the industry is pretty weak. These guys are going to position themselves for success by X. And so when you have a better understanding and belief system with the clients you're working with, you can take their job to market better than they will. And then by the time you have candidates interviewing for the job, they're already excited to talk to somebody. So now you have a VP of engineering or a CTO or a product, any title of a person that hires is now interviewing people that are already been qualified for the job, because that's what we do. But the interest level is already at a peaked state where the interviewer and the interviewee are excited to talk to each other. So think about it. If you're interviewing candidates, like, you want people to want to work for you. You want people to be genuinely interested in what you do. And I can tell you, it drives me nuts. If I interview candidates, I always ask them, okay, great, why'd you apply here? What interests you? That's my first question. Like, why are we talking? What interests you about Averity? And I've had some interesting answers. I've had one person say, I've always wanted to get into financial services. I said, that's great. You should call a financial services firm, because that's not what we do. I had another person say, I'm like, what do you mean Averity? Who's that? I was like, well, that's me. That's who we're talking to. And they're like, and you can hear them typing. They're like, the website is like, you have no idea who I am. You have no idea. Like, I'm sorry, but you've already shown me lack of interest. That means I'm not interested. So when you have that, I think that's there's a word I coined out there. It's called genuosity. And the reason I said it is like when you genuinely have like an authentic interest in what's happening, it shows in the way you do things.
Yeah, I love Genuosity. 100% summarizes that approach of listening with intent and demonstrating care that comes with thoughtful questions, right? Regardless of which side of the puzzle you're looking at, because the objective is the same. And so I think you've demonstrated really clearly how you model your purpose and bring it to life, like internally with your people, with candidates, with clients. One just last question on that is, what if I was to ask you, not like go through your whole team, but to what extent do you feel you have a really good line of sight into your people's, in your team, like internally, your people's passions and their best self and what they're looking to, the difference they're looking to make? So ultimately, like, what line of sight do you feel you have to your people's individual purposes? And what, if anything, do you do to try to kind of bring that to life within the organization and with those interactions they have together and externally as well?
I like to think I have a really deep insight into what drives them, what motivates them, and what their real, like, what sparks them. I have a lot of, I'm not gonna say like personal conversations with people, but I like to really talk to people about what drives them. And when you utilize that into how you can manage people and how you can communicate with people, then you can see them light up. And it's awesome. And that's why I say is, you find something you're good at and you do it better than anyone else. And I think there's a lot of management and leadership techniques out there. What they do is you've got this list of skills you have, right? On the GC index, right? Oh, you're a 2 over here. So we're going to focus on the 2 to how to get you better at that. I don't do that. I focus, I'm like, well, you're an 8 over here. So let's focus on the 8 and let's not turn your 2 to a 3. Let's turn your 8 to a 10, right? That's how you're going to have more impact. And also that's what genuinely drives you. So why are we going to focus on the stuff that you're not good at it? Probably because you hate doing it, and you hate doing it. That's why you're not good at it. So why are we going to do that? Like, let's stay focused on, let's talk about the things that you love. Let's talk about the things that really interest you. And let's make sure that we're using that to your best advantage.
Yeah. Okay. So this is a great segue. You referred already to the GC index, and that's just one tool out there, but it's a unique tool, a tool we use every day, kind of in our work, because it measures something that tends to not get measured naturally in organizations. So what does get measured is, well, personality. We can see it, pretty obvious, right? Or there's all these psychometric assessments that help measure people's personality. And that's great to understand for self-awareness and how we maybe adapt our communication styles, etc. The second thing we see every day, obviously, in business is kind of like learned behaviors, like skills and experience. So we can sort of measure that. In fact, most people are measured on that. That's what drives a lot of business performance and traditional kind of performance reviews and conversations and meetings and things. So the third lens, and what we use the GC index for, is measuring people's natural energy for impact. So when are they most engaged? When are they most excited, most enthusiastic about contributing in a particular way to optimize the impact we want to have? Most people are kind of like below the surface aware of it. It's like the essence of, like, when they know certainly what the things they don't enjoy, the things that don't light them up, and the things that kind of suck the life out of them. So the simple question is, well, what's the energy giving to you and what's energy sucking for you? So we did the GC index. You and I went through it and went through your report. And there's 5 different kind of proclivities, or if you like, energy styles that people naturally exhibit. And everyone has a mix of all of them. That's what's important. But your dominant one was game changer. And when we were going through the conversation, you were like smiling and nodding and smiling and nodding, and you're like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. It's like spot on. When you think about, let's start with you, like, and you think about being a game changer, how does that show up in your kind of day-to-day work with your team, and explain to people kind of what game changer means to you?
So there is something in there's a couple things in the descriptions, in the profile description, that really stood out to me. The game changing thing was very open to new ideas and have the imagination to see what is possible in ways that others often don't. So I think that describes me so well, because a lot of the people would sometimes call that like I think that's like an essence to pure entrepreneurship, is when you're seeing something, you're like, there's just a better way to do this. There's a better way to do this. As opposed to like, oh, I'm an entrepreneur. Look at me, I built the company. It's like, well, that's great, but there's a lot of people out there that have built a website, they call themselves entrepreneurs, and this is not offensive against anybody, but I think when I saw it, I said the game changing thing is like, how can I take what's currently out there and make it better? And how can I improve it? How can I take it and twist it, right? So I think having those kind of what I call game changing ideas. There's something else in there where they see, they often see possibilities, often coupled with frustration, and it drives them to initiate change. That's how I started my company.
That's magic moment number one right there.
There
You used the exact language.
I was just like, I'm just tired of it, and I like, the only way this is ever going to be anything that I really am just super proud of and that I'm excited to do every day is if I do it myself. So that's it. And I think it's interesting because my wife is that way also. And another example of the game changing thing is we bought a house, and the first thing we did was gut renovate it and redo everything inside of it to design it to the way we want it to look and the way we want it to feel and the way we so it's this idea of like, well, I don't want someone else's stuff, I want my stuff, right? Not that mine's better, but it's better because it's mine. And so when you walk into the house and it's been 100% designed and laid out by my wife and I, so by me and my wife. So I think those are like the game changing types of attitudes that I think about when you were talking. And there's some other descriptions in there as well, but it really stood out to me as far as it kind of like you called me out on a lot of different things. I thought it was pretty interesting.
Well, the really interesting thing was when you just were chatting about magic moment number one, and you said I was getting frustrated with the way things were and all this stuff, right? And so I just wanted to pioneer change, and in order to do that, and then I decided to start my own business. And so you could see the possibility of wanting to do something differently, and coupled with the frustration of not being able to get it done yourself within the current constraints of that corporate setting, that was enough energy for you to go after it with support for your wife. And you can see why she supported you, because she's a game changer. She's like, yep, go for it, right? And if she'd have been an implementer, which are all about kind of getting things done very practically, like what's the first thing, what's the second thing, what's the third thing towards goals, she would have challenged you a bit more with it, and you maybe would have still ended up doing it. But she said, well, she probably would have said, well, what's the goal? What's the purpose of doing that? What's the first step? Who else do you need to help you move that forward? Like, what's the business plan? Like, there would have been a lot more questions around that. But regardless, she probably would have still ended up doing it and just had a slightly different perspective. And that's part of the value of doing this stuff. And you referred a few times to kind of like possibilities and seeing those possibilities. You also spoke a lot to doing things better and taking things and making them better, which actually speaks to your second strongest energy, which was called polisher. So game change is about doing things differently to achieve this possibility, like transformational change, big picture kind of blue sky thinking. Polishes are about taking something and making it better, making it the best it can possibly be. And so you kind of have a switch on and off for that. So the reason of just kind of unpacking that briefly for you was getting back to this kind of essence of your people being the best versions of themselves, right? And understanding what drives them, because a lot of what drives us is alignment to our kind of energy, the energy giving things, and what often aligns to what motivates us and enables us to perform at our best. What are some of the ways that you kind of practically and tactically, if you like, with your team, enable people to lean into this essence of their purpose and this essence of their energy that enables them to perform at their best in a sustainable way, versus you need to do this thing and they're capable of doing it, but it doesn't align, and therefore ultimately builds up stress, anxiety, it leads to burnout.
I think the critical thing, especially for myself, is I'll call it some bravado a little bit, is to understand that my way is not necessarily the best way. My way works for me, right? I have tips and advice that may work for you, but ultimately you're the chef in the kitchen, if you will, right? You're the person who's got to do it. So take my words and take my wisdom and take my experience as part of the recipe. Your job is to do it, and you're not me. Don't try to be me. Don't try to sound like me. Don't try to talk like me. Don't try to walk like me. Don't do that. You have to be you, right? I'll do the best I can do to help you with the fundamentals. Now, what I do is I teach models. Follow this model and you will be successful, right? Mm-hmm. This step works, this step works, this steps works, this checklist. Like, you have to go down the checklist, right? And if you do that check, as long as you get the checklist done, you're going to work. If you do it in order, it's a lot easier. But don't be Chris, be Mark.
Yeah.
And I think when you do that, you watch people really, like, they shine because they're like, this is, wow. It's the total opposite of like micromanagement. I'm a very hands-off manager. I really trust people. I give people the knowledge and the autonomy to do earth-shaking things and to shake the world. And it's up to them to do it. That's the whole thing, is you can't make someone do it. But when you give them the opportunity to shine by using their own magic, it's game-changing. It's they watch it happen and they're like, wow, this is awesome. Like, I did that. Or if they have an idea, I'm a big promoter of ideas. Like, if you've got an idea, like, let's go. I want to hear it. Don't keep them to yourself. Don't be selfish with your awesome ideas. Share them with everybody. Everybody wants to hear them. Like, that's how we're all going to become better. Because when you throw an idea out there as well, it's like, we want to hear your ideas, because then it's like, man, I love that idea. You know what? I'm like, I've actually been thinking something similar myself. What if we did this and then we added this on top of it? And all of a sudden it's like, we're like, oh my God, you can put ketchup, mustard, and relish on a hot dog? I'm like, you sure can. It's like, wow, never. And then that's how greatness is attained.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's my little bit of a rant there, but I'm a big promoter of the kind of idea of, like, it's the old, give them a fish versus teach them a fish type of thing. But it's like, no, give them the autonomy to make some decisions. Also, tell people, listen, I hope you fail. Odd thing to say, but that's how you learn. You've got to fall in order to learn to get back up again. Unfortunately, especially when you have kids, you're going to watch them do things, but you're like, oh, like, unfortunately, you have to learn, because you're going to learn sooner or later anyways. So I'm okay. I'm like, if you do something and it doesn't work, as long as it's ethical and moral, and it doesn't destroy the company name and ruin your reputation, like, other than that, what are you really going to do?
Yeah.
So no, by all means, try something out, and if it doesn't work, tweak it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very similar in that I love the power of a model or a framework to enable people to understand their own application of it in order to perform at their best. Because, if you're a game changer and a polisher, you've got other people on your team that are strategists and implementers and the playmakers that kind of pull it all together through the people. Like, in order for everybody to be able to contribute their best and understand how they can offer the most value to the team, often a model or a framework provides something that everybody can apply in their own way, right? Which enables them to be the chef in the kitchen. So the last thing before we get to a couple of personal questions is really around, like, either what's not working or what's getting in the way. So if you think about kind of what the ultimate success would look like for your organization in 3 years' time, what's one of the biggest hurdles that you feel you need to overcome in order to be able to attain that success that you'd be proud to achieve in 3 years' time together?
That's a really good question. I think this is going to sound a little cliche, but I'm just going to say it. I think the hurdles are self-sabotage. I think we all suffer from it. I'm one of the key players. I think I wrote the book on self-sabotage. Is this idea of being happy, this idea of feeling fulfilled is good. You're supposed to feel that way. You know, this idea of constant struggle, this idea of like the universe is out to get me, this idea that I'm supposed to be punished. I don't know. Don't live like that. Live happy, live free. When things are going well, pat yourself on the back and enjoy it. I think I think, you know, what's going to stop anybody from being really who they want to be, or my company getting to where it's supposed to go, is going to be, I think the only people who are going to get in my way are myself. It's going to be self-sabotage. And I'm not willing to do that.
So it's so funny you said that, because, and I'm not funny, just funny coincidental, because literally the podcast we released today, that was his final thought, and it wasn't so much, he didn't rephrase it as self-sabotage, but it's kind of like getting out our own way. And he was talking to the system, like the healthcare system getting out our own way, but also people within the system. Self-sabotage obviously is a very personal thing, but you can apply that to other people in the organization as well. Like if you had unlimited budget, resources, people you could bring in, like whatever it would be, like, have you got an idea? What's the solution to self-sabotage?
Understand what really makes you happy, and this word of abundance. Understanding what abundance is for you, and then living in that abundance. And I don't mean, again, not material things, you know, money in your house and in your driveway and stuff like that, but I mean the way you live, the way you feel, the way you your health, your energy, your attitude. Are you, you know, I think those are, in my opinion, those are the ways we get in the way of ourselves, because I'm not achieving what I want to achieve at work, therefore I need to chain myself to the desk. I hate to tell you, that's not going to help you. You know what might help you is get away from the desk. How about go for a walk, go to the gym, go fishing, go for a hike in nature, go sit on the front porch, go get away from work for a minute and come back at it with a clear mind.
Yeah.
Right. So, but also this idea of I think what happens is I've seen a lot of people, they say I don't deserve it. And then you start asking the question, like, why is this happening to me? And you fall into this victim mode of like, it's not happening to you. Like the economy, you know, we're in a rut right now. And especially as a business owner, you know, it's very easy for me to look in the mirror and be like, why is this happening to me? I didn't do anything wrong. I did everything right. Why? It's like, dude, it happens, man. Like, you know, I hate to say it, but it happens. Suck it up. Right. It's like, you still got an amazing company with amazing people, with amazing clients, and you get to talk to amazing, like, you're doing amazing things. Like, how about relish in that? Right.
Yeah.
How about, you know, celebrate that victory, as opposed to, you know, victimization and again, when we self-sabotage, it's like, oh, I don't deserve this. It's like, yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. Yeah. You know, we've gone through some troubles this year as well as like everybody else, and I've still got 2 trophies sitting here for the best staffing company in North America to work for. And I tell you, I worked for those, and I still think we are. So I'm not going to turn around saying that we don't deserve it. I'm like, no, we definitely deserve it. So
I love that. I completely agree. The solution, it starts with self-awareness and understanding what makes you happy, having an abundance mindset, and then holding yourself accountable to those 2 things. And says, right, let me infuse more enjoyment into my day-to-day, infuse more joy into my day-to-day, and be looking for that and sharing that, and then appreciating all of the good and the things you can control, because we all have a choice, right? And it's easy, as you said, to flip the script into victim mindset. And I've worked with people at every level, and that can be the case even for very, very senior people like business owners such as yourself, as it can be for 25-year-olds starting out of college. The end of the day, it's like, what can you control? What drives your happiness? What can you be grateful for? And then what do you want to do about that? Because that's all you can really focus on. So so that tees up nicely. We'll close out just with one really super simple question, which is, when you think about yourself as a leader, I guess it's two parts. Like, what does impact look like to you, and how do you want to be remembered?
I want to be remembered as the person that constantly had your back, constantly helped drive you forward, the person that constantly like influenced the best out of you, the person who gave you the autonomy to just be great. And I'm not going to say, like, it's not up to me, but what I would call the permission, quote unquote, the permission to be amazing and to achieve great things. So that's how I want to be remembered. And then pretty fun, charismatic, kind of just genuine good dude. I think if I could go out that way, I think that'd be a big win for me.
Fun, charismatic, genuine good dude, I think, is a nice way to close out our conversation. So, and reinforces my double clicks back on my last comment from the introduction at the beginning, which is, I need to come out and hang out with you at some point. So we'll make that happen when I get back to the East Coast at some point. But look, just a quick thank you, Chris, for your time. I've really enjoyed our conversations, including today, obviously. Appreciate you sharing just your practical insights in how you bring your own purpose to work and look to bring out the best in others and give them permission to go forward and be just the absolute best version of themselves. So thank you for sharing that. Some really strong messages for folks to get out their own way and not self-sabotage, but rather focus on happiness and abundance. So thank you very much for being here, and look forward to catching up again.
Absolutely. I've had a lot of fun. This has been great. So thanks for the opportunity.
Cheers, Chris.
We're energized about this journey and hope you choose to join us. Click the subscribe button now so you don't miss out on all the actionable wisdom to come.